Welcome to NOLA. Welcome to our campus here at NOBTS. I want to tell you I consider it to be a profound honor to be asked to speak to this group because of your significance. As I understand Southern Baptist history, there has never been a chapter of Southern Baptist history in which the work that you do is more significant than this particular chapter. This is, I don't know if it will be called the golden age of discipleship in the Southern Baptist Convention or not, but I will tell you it will be called a time in which the battle was won or lost over how we were able to do discipleship in our churches. It is such an essential time. I'm an evangelist by calling. I have spent my adult life as an itinerant evangelist and as a professor of evangelism. I have been studying Southern Baptist evangelism in particular throughout my entire adult life, from my seminary student days all the way through to this day. Hurricane Katrina came along and interrupted my pattern of research and study, as I had to devote absolutely everything to getting this school through that catastrophic event. And after about 2 or 3 years, I received an invitation from the North American Mission Board, who were bringing all the evangelism workers from the nation to New Orleans for a conference. They asked me to do a message for them on the state of evangelism in the Southern Baptist life. And that gave me a reason to set aside the Katrina things and to jump back into what I had been researching and thinking about for so many years. And that interruption of about 3 years gave me fresh eyes as I came in and I saw some things that were quite a revelation to me. I will show you in a moment why I believe this is a time of true crisis and why your particular work is of such great importance to the Southern Baptist Convention. What I emerged out of the preparation for that particular speaking engagement with on my mind, I'd just not noticed before, is that Southern Baptists have always been famous for our aggressive evangelism. That's what people know about who we are as an American church family. What I had not appreciated, recognized, realized is that our approach to discipleship in our most fruitful times was even more aggressive than our approach to evangelism. We didn't call it discipleship, we called it Christian education. But it played an absolutely crucial role in the evangelistic fruitfulness of the Southern Baptist Convention. And as discipleship waned in Southern Baptist churches, so did evangelism. And I'm about to show you that. But the bottom line is we are now facing perhaps the greatest challenge we've ever faced. I can give you the history of American Christianity and all of the major church families of American Christianity in 3 words. Those 3 words are growth, plateau, decline. You see a great period of growth, you see a leveling off and a plateau, and then you see decline. And you pick any major American church family that has been present in our nation for a long period of time, and you will find their history in those 3 words: growth, plateau, decline. It is now our turn for the inevitable battle. It is our turn to fit our story into that 3-word history. We have our period of growth, we have our period of plateau, and we are now in our period of decline. Let me show you what I mean. Of all the studies I've ever done on Southern Baptist evangelism, of all the ones in which I have participated, I have only had one graph that I consider to be truly stunning. It is this graph, this one simple little graph. The timeline for this graph is from 1880 to the present day. That's a pretty good stretch of time. That's most of the history of the Southern Baptist Convention. There are only 2 things on this graph. You will notice that blue line. The blue line is the total number of Southern Baptist churches that we have in the Southern Baptist Convention. And you will note the steady upward movement of that blue line. It's a wonderful line. There's actually only one little dip of about 10 years, and that was from 1920 to 1930. Any idea what was going on during that time? The Great Depression, and it affected the whole nation. It also affected Southern Baptists in very observable ways. But from 1930 forward, you see that inevitable growth of the number of churches proceeding even through this day. That's a wonderful good thing. We don't have enough churches yet. We need still more churches, but you see the steady growth in the number of Southern Baptist churches. The other line, the red line, shows the total number of baptisms from those Southern Baptist churches. And you can look and see that same decade of decline, 1920 to 1930 during the Great Depression. But from 1930, you see that hockey stick growth when we just exploded. Can you see when Southern Baptist became Southern Baptist, the largest Protestant denomination in the United States? You can see it right there. And it was during that time when we had a very aggressive approach to evangelism and a very aggressive approach to discipleship and the following up of believers and nurturing of believers. And you could see that amazing, incredible growth. And then you see that long period of plateau. Lots of ups and downs in baptisms, stayed in the same general area, but lots of ups and downs. But in the year 2000, something happened. Something unprecedented happened. In the year 2000, those two lines crossed. And that blue line representing the total number of churches continued to grow. And that red line representing the total number of baptisms from all those churches declined. And we are now in year 16 of the longest decline in evangelism in the history of the Southern Baptist Convention. The longest decline of baptisms in the history of the Southern Baptist Convention. And you see the chart. There is nothing comparable. And that gap, that ever widening, still growing gap between the number of churches and the number of evangelism, the number of baptisms, tells you we are in trouble as a denomination. And this itinerant evangelist, this professor of evangelism, this lifetime student of Southern Baptist evangelism tells you at the core, the fundamental issue affecting that decline in baptisms and evangelism is a failure in the area of discipleship. What do I mean by that? Let me put it to you in a sentence. Lostness is having a bigger impact on our church members than our church members are having on lostness. Lostness is having a bigger impact on our church members than our church members are having on lostness. You tell me what you think about these stats, because it's not just the baptism stat. For the last decade, for the last 10 years, nearly every year of the last 10 years, each year we've had a fewer number of Southern Baptist members in our churches than the year before. You know how hard it is to get off of church rolls at a Baptist church. That declining membership number, that's a big deal when it's consistent for 10 years. Nearly every year for the last 10 years, we've had a declining number of Southern Baptists attending worship each year. Nearly every year for the last 10 years, we've had a declining number attending Bible studies, Sunday school, small groups of any kind in Southern Baptist life. Now put those things together. A 16-year decline in baptisms, a 10-year decline in members attending worship, and in members attending any form of small group, Sunday school, or Bible study. What does that tell you? We are a convention in decline, and lostness is having a bigger impact on our people. Forget the world, forget the unsaved. Lostness is having an ever-growing impact on the people we already have. They are not coming to worship. They are not coming to Bible study and to small groups. We have a big problem. The question, of course, is why? Why in the world is this happening? What is going on underneath the numbers? As for me, I would tell you the essential need is Christ-likeness. Now, let me take our historic term of Christian education, our more contemporary term of discipleship, and tell you what both of those are talking about. It is Christ-likeness. Every strategy for evangelism begins with one presupposition, whatever that strategy is. That strategy is a life in Christ is different than a life outside of Christ. That is the operating assumption of the church. A life in Christ is different than a life outside of Christ. And you and I must understand calling people to Christ likeness, helping our people look more like Jesus so that the longer they are members of our church, the more like Jesus they look. That is the expectation of the New Testament. So let's look at the New Testament. 2 Corinthians 3:18. But we all with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image, from glory to glory, just as from the Lord, the Spirit. The longer we look in the face of Jesus, the more like Jesus we become. We see this. Any of you know people who've been married for a long time? Have you ever noticed they start looking alike and behaving alike? Have you noticed that? And they know what each other are going to order when they walk into just about any restaurant. They know their attitudes towards things. They are more and more similar in so many things. Why? Because of the time they have spent together. The longer we are in step with Jesus, the more like Jesus we ought to look. This is the expectation of God. This is why conversion is the beginning of a journey of transformation. It is not the end of the quest for salvation. The longer we look in the face of Jesus, the more like Jesus we ought to look. We'll ask the question a different way. What drove the expansion of Christianity? You have this little small handful of disciples, people that Jesus taught, mentored, led, whatever terminology you want to use. You have this little small group of disciples in a backwater part of the Roman Empire. How did Christianity expand from that circle of disciples to become the worldwide faith that it became? Acts 4:13 says it so vividly. Now when they saw, and they being the scribes and Pharisees, the Sanhedrin, the same body of people that condemned Jesus to death. Now when they saw the boldness of Peter and John, and they perceived that they were uneducated, common men, their lack of that day's version of formal education was readily apparent. You could tell they were professional fishermen and not professional religious leaders. When they saw the boldness of Peter and John, and they perceived that they were uneducated, common men, they were astonished, and they recognized that they had been with Jesus. To quote an ancient Hebrew expression, wow! Do you understand why the heart of the power of the church is the Christ likeness of its members? The attractive force of Christianity is more than the language proclaimed of our gospel. It is the living illustration of that language in the lives of those who follow Jesus. Christ likeness is the essential component for the growth of the church, for the advancement of the gospel to the ends of the earth. And without Christ likeness, everything becomes unstable. So you ask me, do you know a center of Baptist life? Let's say famous Baptist places. Atlanta, pretty big Baptist place. Dallas, Texas, pretty big Baptist place. Houston, largest Baptist association in the United States, Houston, Texas. Are they more or less Baptist today than they were 20 years ago? We have a crisis in discipleship. So I will put it this way. The most significant issue facing the Southern Baptist Convention, its churches, and its mission enterprise is the Christ likeness of its members. And if we don't address and succeed on this issue, we cannot succeed in our mission to take Jesus to the corners of our nation and to the ends of the earth. Christ likeness is absolutely crucial. And there has never been a time when our Southern Baptist churches have had a greater struggle with how you implement a process of helping people become more Christ-like than this day and this time. That means, ladies and gentlemen, I'm profoundly honored to be in your presence because the weight of the success of our mission is falling upon your shoulders. I am a preacher, and nearly every Sunday I'm standing behind some pulpit or on some platform. And I understand that the typical Southern Baptist church is pulpit-led. That's the way it is. But I want to tell you where the power comes from. It comes from more than the pulpit. It comes from the effect of the sermons on the lives of the people, and it takes more than 25, 30, 35, 45 minutes in a sermon to help people become more Christ-like. We have to have power in the pulpit, but we have to have discipleship processes in our churches that will help people gaze in the face of Jesus if we are going to see true change take place and power fill all the ministries of the church until the church becomes a transformational force in its community setting. You play an inevitable, essential, and necessary role in this battle we are now facing as Southern Baptist. We've had the battle of growth. We've had the battle of plateau. We are now facing the reality of decline and the greatest battle of all. It's our turn. How are we going to win this battle if we win it? It is going to be through effectiveness in disciple making.